Welcome to this session on Edward Thorndike and his contributions to behaviorist learning theory. Thorndike was one of the most influential American psychologists of the early 20th century. His work on animal learning and his formulation of fundamental laws of learning laid the groundwork for behaviorism and continue to influence how we design instruction, manage classrooms, and develop educational technology. In this presentation, we will explore his three key laws: the law of effect, the law of exercise, and the law of readiness, and discuss their practical applications in professional training contexts. Edward Lee Thorndike was born in 1874 in Williamsburg, Massachusetts, and went on to become one of the most influential American psychologists. He earned his doctorate at Columbia University, where he conducted his famous puzzle box experiments with cats. These experiments involved placing cats inside specially designed boxes from which they could escape by performing specific actions, such as pulling a lever or pressing a pedal. Through repeated trials, Thorndike observed that the cats gradually learned to escape more quickly, which led him to develop his laws of learning. His work is considered foundational to behaviorism and has had a lasting impact on educational theory and instructional design. He published over 500 works during his career and served as president of the American Psychological Association in 1912. Thorndike formulated three fundamental laws that explain how learning occurs. These laws emerged from his systematic observations of animal behavior and were later applied to human learning. The law of effect focuses on the consequences of behavior. Satisfying outcomes reinforce behavior, while unpleasant outcomes discourage it. The law of exercise emphasizes the importance of repetition and practice in strengthening learned connections. The law of readiness addresses the learner's state of preparedness and how motivation affects the ability to learn. Together, these three laws form a comprehensive framework for understanding how behaviors are acquired and modified. Let us now examine each law in detail over the next 3 slides. The law of effect is perhaps Thorndike's most famous and influential contribution. It states that when a behavior is followed by a satisfying consequence, what we might call a reward or positive outcome, the connection between the stimulus and the response is strengthened. This means the learner is more likely to repeat that behavior in the future. Conversely, when a behavior leads to an uncomfortable or unpleasant outcome, the connection weakens and the behavior becomes less likely to occur. This law is the foundation of what B.F. Skinner would later develop into operant conditioning. In a professional training context, this means that providing timely, positive feedback when employees demonstrate desired behaviors is essential for reinforcing those behaviors. Recognition programs, performance bonuses, and constructive praise all leverage the law of effect. It also reminds us that punitive approaches can suppress learning rather than encourage it. The law of exercise has 2 complementary components. The law of use states that when a stimulus-response connection is practiced repeatedly, it becomes stronger and more reliable. Think of how an employee becomes more proficient at a task, whether it is data entry, public speaking, or operating machinery, the more they practice it. The second component, the law of disuse, states that connections that are not practiced will gradually weaken. This is why skills training requires ongoing reinforcement, not just a one-off session. In practical terms, this law supports the use of spaced repetition, regular refresher courses, on-the-job practice opportunities, and simulation exercises. It also explains why employees who do not use certain skills for extended periods may need retraining. When designing training programs, build in opportunities for learners to practice new skills regularly and provide mechanisms for ongoing reinforcement. The law of readiness addresses the learner's internal state and its impact on the learning process. Thorndike identified 3 key scenarios. First, when a learner is ready to learn and is given the opportunity, the experience is satisfying and productive. Second, When a learner is ready but is prevented from learning, perhaps due to scheduling constraints, lack of resources, or organizational barriers, frustration results. Third, when a learner is forced to engage in learning without being mentally or physically prepared, the experience is unpleasant and counterproductive. This law has profound implications for training design. It tells us that timing matters. We need to assess whether learners are ready before delivering training. Prerequisite skills should be in place. The learning environment should be supportive, and learners should understand why the training is relevant to them. Needs assessments, pre-training communications, and creating a psychologically safe learning environment all help ensure readiness. Thorndike's laws have had a profound and lasting influence across three major areas. In instructional design, the law of effect tells us to build in reinforcement loops, immediate feedback, rewards for correct answers, and encouragement. The law of exercise supports scaffolded practice, where learners start with simple tasks and gradually tackle more complex ones. The law of readiness reminds designers to conduct needs assessments and ensure prerequisites are met before training begins. In classroom management, these laws support strategies such as consistent positive reinforcement, regular practice opportunities, and setting clear expectations. Trainers who apply these principles create environments where learners feel both motivated and prepared. In educational technology, we see Thorndike's influence in adaptive learning platforms that provide instant feedback, spaced repetition systems like flashcard apps that strengthen connections over time, and pre-assessment tools that determine whether a learner is ready for the next level of content. Let us recap the key messages from this session. First, the law of effect reminds us that reinforcement is the cornerstone of behavior change. If we want learners to repeat desired behaviors, we need to ensure those behaviors lead to satisfying outcomes. Second, the law of exercise underscores that practice is non-negotiable. Learning requires regular repetition, and skills that are not exercised will deteriorate. Third, the law of readiness tells us that we must prepare our learners, both mentally and physically, before expecting them to engage effectively with new material. Together, these three laws provide a practical framework that continues to influence instructional design, classroom management, and the development of educational technology. As you return to your roles, consider how you can apply these principles to improve your training programs, support your team's development, and create learning experiences that truly stick. Thank you for your attention, and I welcome any questions.